A soft breeze moved through the curtains as Emily sat alone on the edge of her bed, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. The house was quiet, too quiet. She stared at her phone, the words from her husband's last message echoing in her mind. If my name's not on it, then what's the point of being married? It wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about trust, love, and a promise Emily had made to her late mother. Before we dive deeper into this emotional story of love, loyalty, and legacy, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss how this one unfolds. Emily had lost her mother 2 years ago, a woman who had built everything from scratch, working 2 jobs just to make sure her children never went to bed hungry. When her mother passed, she left Emily a modest inheritance, enough to change her life, but not enough to forget where it came from. Emily hadn't touched that money for months. It sat safely in a savings account, untouched, almost sacred. In her heart, it wasn't her money. It was her mother's final whisper, her last gift. And Emily swore she'd use it for something meaningful, something her mother would have been proud of. One afternoon, her grandparents called. Their voices trembled with age and exhaustion. They'd decided it was time to sell the old family home, the same house where Emily grew up, the one with the creaky wooden stairs and the giant oak tree in the backyard where she used to swing as a little girl. That place wasn't just a house. It was memory made real. Emily's heart ached at the thought of losing it forever. Without hesitation, she decided she'd buy it. Not for herself, but for her family, for her children to one day play in that same yard. It was the perfect way to honor her mother's memory. But there was one thing she didn't expect. Her husband, Mark, didn't see it that way. When she told him her plan over dinner, his fork froze mid-air. "You're buying a house? With your mum's money?" Emily nodded gently. "It's not just a house, Mark. It's the house, my grandparents' home. I want to keep it in the family." He frowned, setting his fork down slowly. "Okay, fine. But you're putting my name on the deed too, right?" Emily hesitated. The air thickened instantly. "No," she said quietly. "It's my inheritance. My mum's wish was for her children to use it wisely, not to share it outside the family." Mark laughed, not out of joy but disbelief. "Outside the family? Emily, I am your family." Her chest tightened. "You are, Mark. But this is different." What began as a calm conversation quickly turned into a storm. Mark's voice rose. "So what? You don't trust me? You think I'd take it from you?" "It's not about trust," she insisted, tears stinging her eyes. "It's about respect, for my mum, for what she wanted." But Mark couldn't see it that way. To him, leaving his name off the deed meant she didn't see him as an equal, that she didn't believe in their partnership. He stood up, pushing the chair back with a hard scrape. "You know what, Emily? If you can't even put my name next to yours, maybe this marriage isn't what I thought it was." The words cut deeper than he realized. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat on the couch, staring at the framed picture of her and her mum from years ago. Her mum's arms around her, both smiling in front of that same old house. "What would you do, Mum?" she whispered. She remembered her mother's warning, how she'd told her and her brother never to mix inheritance with relationships. "If you ever use this money," her mother had said, "make sure it stays in the family. You never know what life will bring." Emily thought back to that moment, to how serious her mother's eyes were. It wasn't about greed. It was about protection, about making sure her children would always have something that was truly theirs. Still, Mark's words echoed. This isn't a partnership. Was he right? Emily wanted to believe that love was stronger than paperwork, that marriage was built on trust, not legal documents. But she also knew how quickly love could change. She'd seen it happen around her, even within her own family. The next morning, Mark barely spoke to her. He grabbed his coffee, muttered a short bye, and left for work. Emily sat in silence for hours, the ticking of the kitchen clock louder than ever. She opened her laptop and looked at photos of the old house, faded wallpaper, chipped paint, worn-out floors. It needed work, but she could already see it in her mind. Her kids running down the hallway, her grandparents smiling from the porch. It felt right. She clicked buy. The deal was set in motion. When Mark found out that evening, he didn't shout this time. He just looked at her, his eyes cold. "So you did it? Without me?" "I had to," she whispered. "It was time." Mark sighed, leaning against the counter. "And my name?" She shook her head. He turned away. "Then don't expect me to help fix it. It's your house, remember?" Emily felt her throat tighten. "Fine, I'll do it myself." And she meant it. As the days passed, she threw herself into work and renovations, paint-stained jeans, tired eyes, and a heart that ached with every wall she scrubbed clean. Sometimes her kids would come by and help her paint. Other times she was there alone, hammer in hand, determination in her chest. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about a house, it was a test of love, loyalty, and how much two people could truly understand each other's hearts. As the sunset lit the old house in gold, Emily looked around, exhausted but proud. She could almost feel her mother's presence there, calm, approving. Still, in the quiet, one question haunted her. Would Mark ever forgive her? Or had she already built a home that he'd never want to step into? The next few weeks felt like walking through fog. Emily worked on the house every chance she got, sanding the wooden floors, repainting the cracked walls, planting fresh flowers near the porch. But the silence between her and Mark had grown wider than ever. Every night he came home late. Sometimes he barely said a word, other times he'd mutter something sharp, just enough to sting. "You look tired," he said one evening, not looking up from his phone. "Maybe you should have let your family help with that house instead of doing it alone." Emily didn't respond. She just kept stirring the pasta in the pot, pretending the steam was the reason her eyes were watering. She tried to stay strong, but she couldn't shake the guilt. She'd followed her heart, yet it felt like she was losing everything else along the way. One night, after the kids went to bed, Mark finally spoke his mind. "You know, Emily," he said quietly, "I used to think we were a team. But ever since that house, it's like you built a wall. And I'm on the outside." Emily turned to him. "It's not a wall, Mark. It's a promise, one I made long before you and I ever met." He laughed under his breath. "To your mother?" "To myself," she said firmly. "To protect what she worked for. You didn't see how hard she struggled. You didn't hear her coughing through the nights after working 2 jobs just to pay the bills." Mark's voice softened. "I get that, I really do. But I'm your husband, Emily. What happens to us?" "To partnership." Emily hesitated. "You still have everything we built together. The life insurance, our savings, the house we live in, all of that is ours. But that one property, that's not about money, it's about legacy." He didn't say anything for a while. The ticking clock filled the air. Finally, he stood up and walked away. For days, Emily barely saw him. He slept on the couch, avoided eye contact, and when the kids asked what was wrong, he'd smile and say, "Mum and I are just figuring things out." But behind that smile, his pride was bruised. Then one Saturday morning, Emily was at the old house, scrubbing the kitchen tiles, when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, and there was Mark, standing in the doorway, holding a toolbox. He didn't speak at first, just looked around, at the walls, the dust, the sunlight streaming through cracked blinds. "This place," he said finally. "It smells like my grandmother's house. Emily smiled faintly. Yeah, it kind of has that old soul to it. Mark set the toolbox down. Where do you need me? For a moment, Emily thought she misheard him. What? You said you'd do it all yourself, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. But maybe you shouldn't have to. Her heart swelled with a mix of relief and confusion. You sure? He nodded. I'm still mad, don't get me wrong, but I also don't want to see you break your back over this. For the first time in weeks, Emily laughed, softly, tiredly, but it felt good. They worked side by side that day, barely speaking, but the silence felt different. Not cold, healing. Mark fixed the broken cabinets while Emily painted the trim. When they stopped for lunch, they sat on the floor, eating sandwiches and laughing about the time they tried to assemble furniture and ended up with 3 extra screws. For a brief moment, it felt like old times. But as the sun began to set, the peace faded when Mark asked, "So, after all this, you're still not putting my name on it, right?" Emily froze. She wanted to say yes, to make things simple, to stop the tension that had been building like a storm. But her mother's voice echoed in her mind again. Never give away what's meant to protect you. She swallowed hard. No, I'm not. Mark sighed deeply and looked away. Then I guess this house really isn't ours, is it? He stood up, grabbed his toolbox, and walked out. This time, she didn't chase after him. Emily sat there, alone again, her hands trembling slightly. She felt like she'd just watched her marriage crack. One quiet piece at a time. That night, she couldn't stop thinking. About her mother, about Mark, about how love and legacy had somehow turned into rivals. She went back to the old house the next morning, determined to finish what she started. The place was almost ready, the rooms bright again, the air fresh with new paint. But no matter how beautiful it looked, it felt incomplete without him. As she stood by the window, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. I'm staying at my brother's for a few days. Need space. Her heart sank. Tisha, she typed a reply. Okay, be safe, then deleted it. She put the phone down and whispered to herself, what have I done? The next few days were a blur. She tried to distract herself with work and the kids, but every corner of the house reminded her of the man who used to tease her about her obsession with fixing everything. Late one evening, as she packed up tools in the garage, she found an old photo frame, one she hadn't noticed before. Inside was a picture of her mother holding her as a child, and behind it, a folded note. Her hands shook as she opened it. In her mother's handwriting, faint but still clear, were the words, "My dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means this house is still part of you. Don't let it divide your heart. Protect what's yours, but remember, love is also something you must protect." Emily stared at those words for a long time. Her mother had always been right, but this time it felt different. Maybe, just maybe, she had misunderstood what her mum meant all along. She realized that protecting what's hers didn't mean losing the people who mattered most. That night, she made a decision, one that would change everything. She picked up her phone, took a deep breath, and sent Mark a message. "Meet me at the old house tomorrow, please." The next morning, a soft mist rolled across the yard as Emily waited in front of the old house. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of everything unsaid. She didn't know if Mark would come. Minutes passed. The sound of birds faded into silence. Then, the familiar sound of tires crunching gravel. His car pulled up slowly, and when he stepped out, she could see the hesitation in his eyes. He looked tired, like a man torn between pride and pain. "Hey," Emily said softly. "Hey," he replied. His voice was flat, but his eyes wandered over the house. The freshly painted walls, the new garden bed, the way the morning light hit the windows. You finished it. Almost, she said with a faint smile. Just needed one last thing. He crossed his arms. What's that? Emily took a deep breath and reached into her bag. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, the note her mother had written all those years ago. She handed it to him. Mark hesitated, then unfolded it. His eyes scanned the faded ink. When he finished reading, he looked up slowly. She wanted you to protect what's yours, he said quietly. I get that, Emily nodded. I thought protecting it meant keeping everyone else out, but now I realize maybe she meant protecting it with the people who matter, not from them. Mark stared at her for a long moment. So, what are you saying? I'm saying, she said softly, I don't want this house to be a symbol of what we lost. I want it to be part of what we're building and together. He blinked, caught off guard. You're putting my name on it. Emily shook her head gently. Not yet. Not because I don't trust you, but because I want to earn that decision together. I want us to rebuild the trust first. If we can do that, then this house, this legacy, will truly belong to both of us. Mark didn't say anything. He just looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in weeks. You really believe that? He asked quietly. I do, she said, and I still believe in us. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing through the oak tree branches. Then Mark took a deep breath and stepped closer. You know, he said with a small, tired smile, I missed this place. I missed you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Then come home. He smiled faintly, nodding. All right. They stood together on the porch, the sunlight slowly breaking through the mist. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning. Later that afternoon, they walked through each room, imagining what it could become. The old study would be a playroom for the kids. The upstairs guest room would be a small office for Emily's work. And the kitchen, the heart of the home, would be where they'd start over. As they painted the last wall together, laughter returned. Quiet at first, then louder, easier. At one point, Mark turned to her and said, You know, your mum sounds like she was a wise woman. Emily smiled. She was. And if she were here right now, she'd probably tell us both to stop being so stubborn. They laughed, really laughed this time, the kind that comes when forgiveness finally replaces pride. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Emily looked around the finished home. Warm light spilling across the floors, the smell of paint and hope in the air. She thought about her mother, her grandparents, and the generations that came before. And she realized something her mother might have wanted her to understand all along. That legacy isn't about what you keep to yourself. It's about what you share with love and intention. That night, as she locked the door of the old house, she whispered, Thank you, Mum. For everything. Then she took Mark's hand, and together they walked down the path toward home. Because in the end, protecting love and protecting legacy didn't have to be two different things, not if both came from the same place in her heart. Love built on trust can survive anything, even the hardest decisions. Protect what matters to you, but never forget that sometimes the truest legacy is the one you build together. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends.